Where this all starts to tie in with the salvation of Israel as the linchpin for starting up these end-time events is how the mere existence of Messianic Jews like myself further challenges the concept of a pre-tribulation rapture. It's been a relatively new development for Jewish believers in Yeshua to continue to identify, with the full force of Scripture behind us, as both simultaneously members of the people of Israel and the body of Messiah. That there's no biblical requirement whatsoever to divorce ourselves from our Jewishness or our people in order to follow Yeshua. And while dispensationalists who separate out the salvation of Israel from the so-called church age, while they reject this reality for Messianic Jews, claiming that a Jew who believes in Jesus is now simply considered a Christian, the separation of these two identities for Jewish believers is nevertheless a false dichotomy. But it's this biblical truth for believing Jews, as spiritual and physical Israel, that pre-tribulationists and others have historically failed to take into account when considering whether all believers alive at the time will endure or escape the tribulation. In the Jewish New Testament commentary on Revelation chapter 4, verse 1, David Stern points out how this makes the pre-trib view problematic. If Jewish believers are members both of Israel and of the Messianic community, pre-tribulationists must answer this question. When the rapture takes place, do Jewish believers in Yeshua stay behind with the rest of physical Israel? Or do they join the rest of the Messianic community with Yeshua in the air? They can't be in both places at once. And in his commentary on 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 15b through 17, he adds, "To me, it is unthinkable that Messianic Jews are to be faced with the decision at the tribulation of whether to identify with their own people, the Jews, and stay to suffer, or with their own people, the believers, the Messianic community, the church, and escape." So in other words, if Jewish believers are just as much Israel as Jewish unbelievers, which we are, and unbelieving Israel doesn't escape the tribulation, then believing Israel doesn't escape the tribulation either. Therefore, neither do Christians. Again, by the mere existence of Messianic Jews like me, we're essentially in the way of pre-tribulation rapture theology, as Dr. Stern explains. And this brings us back to why the idea that the salvation of Israel, the Jewish people, as the linchpin that restarts the clock on all these end-time events, doesn't need to take a pre-tribulation rapture into account. Because since Yeshua himself teaches us that we won't see him again until all Israel receives him as Messiah, then that means whether Israel is saved before a pre-trib rapture or prior to the initiation of the day of the Lord or any time in between is in a very real sense irrelevant. Israel's salvation, according to Yeshua, still needs to happen first. That was the whole point of my original teaching. And as for the timing of a pre-trib rapture specifically, in addition to the plain sense of the scriptures that pre-tribulationists need to overcome, we now see that Messianic Jews are also a practical and theological obstacle to that view. Because despite the perspective and theology of many Christians, the entire Bible, including the parts about the tribulation, isn't Christian-centric, but Israel-centric. The Bible is one complete story about how God uses Israel, the Jews, to bring reconciliation and restoration to the world. Christians, or believers from among the nations, rely on the Jewish people not simply as those through whom God brought the covenants and the Messiah, but eventually who will ignite the salvation of all the earth. That's the point of believers needing to take the sharing of Yeshua with Jewish people seriously, because it not only blesses the apple of God's eye, but it leads Israel to finally do their ultimate job and hastens your own homecoming to Yeshua.